Roman and Elizabeth had been in love since their college days. Barely after graduating, they got married. They received a sufficient amount of money for their first mortgage payment as a wedding gift. The couple saved up for an apartment for another year, finding jobs in their field, and then immediately bought a 2-bedroom to ensure there was enough space for a family. Elizabeth was overjoyed to have such a caring, attentive, and faithful husband. Roman was happy to have married against his mother's advice. Roman's mother did not like Elizabeth, even though the girl worked and did almost everything at home, only occasionally asking her husband for help. Roman, of course, never refused his beloved. This infuriated Vera, Roman's mother. She believed the girl was perfectly capable of managing on her own, as Vera had done when Roman's father found a new love and left the family. Roman often heard accusations from his mother about his wife's sloppiness, laziness, and even unfaithfulness. Over time, these conversations tired the man, and he began to communicate less with his mother, preferring his new family. Especially since they were expecting a baby, Elizabeth was pregnant. After the birth of their daughter, whom they named Barbara, Elizabeth went on maternity leave and took over all the household chores and caring for their daughter. Vera loved her granddaughter but was still not satisfied with Elizabeth. Now, Vera not only instigated her son but also expressed her dissatisfaction directly to Elizabeth. The girl was tired of such treatment and decided to talk to her husband, hoping he could suggest how to improve relations with his mother. "Roman, this can't go on forever, can it?" Elizabeth began the conversation at dinner. "What exactly?" Roman asked, not understanding. "Today, your mother called and told me she saw you at the office. According to her, I either did not iron your shirt or did it very poorly. So, everyone was looking at you sideways and almost whispering behind your back about how bad a wife I am." "Oh, Lord." Roman sighed and reached for a glass of wine. "You know she raised me alone. Did everything herself. Now she finds any excuse to pick on you. Is she mad because I'm sitting ducks with our child, or what? And she says I don't take good care of you." Elizabeth frowned. "I don't want to endure her reproaches anymore. Tell me, how can I find common ground with your mother?" "It's a mystery to me too," Roman shrugged. Elizabeth was slightly angered by such careless attitude. Why was her husband so negligent about the problems? You lived under the same roof with her for so many years. What, did you have arguments every day? No, of course not. I don't know, Elizabeth, she just loved me. That's all. And she doesn't love me, right? Well, you don't have to take it so sharply. Roman got up from the table, went over to his wife, and hugged her. "The most important thing is that I love you. But I wouldn't like your mother to continue thinking that I'm a bad wife. She'll get used to it over time. Especially since she's crazy about Barbara. Oh, you know what? Try asking her for advice about children. Ask her to sit with Barbara while you clean the house. It will be a help to you, and she'll be pleased." "Do you think that will work?" Elizabeth asked doubtfully. She wondered if this might have the opposite effect. "We won't know until we try," Roman shrugged. Elizabeth clicked her tongue in irritation. "Fine, I'll invite your mother over tomorrow while you're at work." "That's wonderful." Roman kissed his wife on the forehead. "Let's go to bed?" "Let's go," Elizabeth replied. The next morning, Elizabeth saw her husband off to work, then called her mother-in-law, hoping she was in a good mood. After a few rings, Roman's mother answered, although she rarely picked up the phone when she saw that it was Elizabeth calling. "Hello?" "Hello, Vera, how are you?" "Fine," the woman answered indifferently. "Is something wrong?" "No, everything's fine. I just saw Roma off to work. I'm planning to do a major cleaning today." "It's about time," the woman noted, but Elizabeth swallowed the insult. "Yes, that's what I think. I wanted to ask you for a favor, Vera." "Here we go." The woman sighed heavily. "Elizabeth, I already know you iron shirts terribly. Can't you even mop the floors by yourself?" "Why not? I can. It's just that Barbara constantly demands attention. I thought, maybe you could come over. Sit with your granddaughter, help with advice. Elizabeth endured the insult about her incompetence with all her might. Oh, fine. I'll be there in half an hour. Don't do anything yet, I'll tell you what to do. Wonderful. I'll be waiting for you. Elizabeth hung up the phone and quietly cursed through her teeth. The last thing she needed was for 6-month-old Barbara to start swearing. Elizabeth had done the cleaning yesterday. But she rightly decided that her mother-in-law would find a multitude of issues, even where there simply were none. Elizabeth herself was a very tidy girl. But she still couldn't please Vera. Now, the woman considered Elizabeth a freeloader who sat in front of the TV all day and did nothing around the house. And that it was her son who barely maintained the cleanliness of the house, even though he had told his mother many times that this was not the case. Vera said a real woman always cleans under the stove, behind the toilet, moves the wardrobe, and washes the windows at least once every 2 weeks. Of course, Elizabeth didn't follow all her demands, because it seemed only cleaning companies cleaned that way. She mopped the floors every day, dusted off. But polishing the cutlery after every dishwashing seemed excessive to her. As did Vera's other advice. Moreover, Roman himself didn't recall his mother doing so. But this time, Elizabeth needed to make a good impression to finally have a heart-to-heart with her mother-in-law. So, she spent all of yesterday cleaning. When Vera rang the doorbell, Barbara was crawling on the carpet and playing with her rattles. Elizabeth opened the door and invited the woman in. God, what a mess! Vera declared from the threshold. Where? Elizabeth blinked in surprise. Look here, your child is playing on a dirty carpet, putting dirty toys in her mouth, and her bottle is covered with a dirty lid. Vera, I just vacuumed the carpet. I clean it every evening with a special carpet shampoo. Barbara's toys are clean. And I covered the bottle with a boiled lid 5 minutes ago, Elizabeth protested. Elizabeth, did you call me for advice or to argue? Vera immediately reacted. I'm here for advice. Elizabeth sighed heavily, regretting she had listened to her husband. Well, here's my advice. We've been standing at the doorway arguing for about 10 minutes, and you're not watching the child, and it smells like overbrewed coffee from the kitchen. It can't be overbrewed, we have a coffee machine. Elizabeth almost shouted. She realized Vera wouldn't give her a moment of peace. So, you don't know how to make coffee and poison my son with cheap stuff from a machine? Oh God. Let's go, I'll teach you how to make coffee. Take Barbara while I make us a proper drink, and you can feed her. Elizabeth sighed resignedly and picked up her daughter. Barbara didn't want to part with her rattle and took it with her, which made Vera frown. The feeding process should not involve toys, Elizabeth, otherwise Barbara will become distracted. I took all the toys away from Roma when he ate. That's why he grew up to be a good, focused person. As Vera lectured, Elizabeth cursed the moment she had invited her mother-in-law over. Vera dispensed her wise advice all day. It turned out the coffee machine hadn't been cleaned since the morning use. The dishes had streaks, it was dirty under the bed. Dust on the upper shelves, the laundry was poorly ironed, the food was badly cooked, and there were many more flaws. Elizabeth felt drained. She wanted to talk to her mother-in-law, show that she could properly take care of her family, but in the end, everything only got worse. Why did Elizabeth follow Roman's advice? When Vera had imposed her order in Elizabeth's home, Roman had just returned from work. He found his wife deeply depressed and his mother at the stove. Wow, good evening, was all the man could say. Hello, Roman, come in, I made your favorite meatballs with mashed potatoes, Vera immediately replied. What about the vegetable stew Elizabeth made yesterday? Asked Roman. I threw it out, Vera shrugged. It was all swimming in tomato paste, it was more like a soup, not a stew. Mom, it wasn't swimming in anything, Roman firmly stated. Why do you even stand there cooking something when we had plenty of food? Because it was all tasteless, that's why. Your wife didn't even bother to look up a single recipe before throwing in her own imagination. Lord, Mom, Elizabeth invited you over to finally make friends with you, and you start criticizing her and redoing everything. Have you ever thought that other people might have different tastes, habits, and a whole different view of the world? Roman, don't you dare yell at me. If you both like living in a pigsty, then I wash my hands of it. I only feel sorry for Barbara, who will grow up with irresponsible parents. With these words, Vera began to dress and left without saying goodbye. Why did you do that with your mother, Roman? Asked Elizabeth, who started to feel sorry for Vera. She certainly did not expect such treatment from her own son in her old age. Honestly, I thought you were exaggerating. I couldn't imagine that my mother actually behaved like that. Roman fell silent. Let's take a break from seeing her, let her cool down, and then I'll talk to her myself. Time passed, and Roman never started communicating with his mother. Elizabeth was distressed by such terrible relations between mother and son. She often put herself in Vera's place and understood that she might have behaved the same way. Roman did not want to reconcile with his mother, so Elizabeth decided to talk to Vera. But the woman refused to come to their house. Elizabeth planned to visit the woman herself in the coming days, but felt unwell. A couple of days later, it turned out that Elizabeth was pregnant with their second child. She was afraid to go to her mother-in-law because the conversation could turn very difficult, and she should not be stressed. 9 months later, Elizabeth gave birth to a son. Roman only called his mother twice during this time. The first time to say that Elizabeth was pregnant, and the second time to congratulate her on the birth of her grandson. However, Vera did not want to come to the celebration, which brought Elizabeth to tears. The girl did not want to be the reason for such a prolonged quarrel between mother and son. Elizabeth suffered long after her mother-in-law refused to come to their house. The woman was so offended that she no longer wanted to see anyone from their family. So passed a long 5 years. Elizabeth got a job, raised the children, and ran the household. Lately, Roman had been having some problems at his job, and one day he came home earlier than usual. "Dear, you're home so early today, I haven't even made dinner yet," Elizabeth muttered, flustered. Roman looked disheveled and depressed. "What happened?" "Nothing. Except that I was laid off, just minor details," Roman snapped. "Well." The woman sighed heavily. "It's okay, we'll live on my salary for now, and then you'll find a job." "You don't understand anything, I was with that company almost from its inception. Yes, I joined when this damn firm was unknown to anyone. I earned peanuts. Only thanks to hard work, my work included, Elizabeth, the company made it to the market. And they kicked me out, understand?" The man threw his briefcase with papers onto the sofa. "Calm down, Roman." And she says, "Calm down." Well, I'll go and calm down. Roman immediately left the apartment, slamming the door behind him, leaving his puzzled and upset wife alone. Elizabeth tried to call him on his mobile, but after a couple of rings, the man simply turned off his phone. He didn't return by midnight, nor by 3 in the morning. Elizabeth was terrified. She called the police, but they told her that 3 days must pass before they could file a missing person report. Elizabeth called all of Roman's friends. Some didn't answer, some sleepily said they had no idea where he could be now. In desperation, Elizabeth called her mother-in-law. They hadn't spoken for almost 6 years, and now she was trying to reach her at 4 in the morning. The mother-in-law did not answer for a long time, but eventually picked up. "What's the matter?" she asked gruffly. "Vera, please, let's forget about our fight. Roman has disappeared somewhere." Elizabeth blurted out through tears. "What?" "He came home from work earlier today. I asked what happened, and he said he was laid off. He literally yelled at me and ran out of the house like some boy. Then I called him on the phone, and he turned it off. It's 4 in the morning, and I don't know where he is." Interrupted by fits of hysteria, Elizabeth reported. "Stop crying," Vera commanded in an authoritative tone. What did he say before he ran off? That he was going to calm down. So, he went to calm down. What's unclear about that? But where is he unclear? At least in a bar, at most with another woman. Elizabeth was dumbfounded. They had lived in a happy marriage for 10 years. How could he exchange her for some other woman? Do you really not care? Elizabeth asked quietly. Of course not. My son is God knows where in the middle of the night, even if he is a bad son. Call me when he returns. And if he doesn't return? He could have been beaten, maimed, killed. Stop the hysteria. Vera again demanded commandingly. I'm worried too, but there's nothing we can do right now. So just go to sleep. And when Roman returns, do call me. I think it's time to talk. Okay, Elizabeth sniffled. Sorry for bothering you, Vera. Vera didn't say anything in response and hung up the phone. Roman only returned at 8 in the morning. Elizabeth couldn't sleep at all. She had taken the morning off work, explaining the situation. The man was terribly drunk. He reeked of a mixture of alcohol and women's perfume. His shirt was smeared with someone's lipstick, and his belt was missing. Elizabeth understood everything at that moment. She silently dragged Roman by the hand to the bedroom and closed the door. She got the kids ready for school and kindergarten and drove them there herself. Only when Varvara was at school and little Maxim in the hands of the kindergarten teachers did the woman allow her stone mask of indifference to crack. She pressed her face into the steering wheel and cried for a long time. She couldn't drive, she needed to calm down. Elizabeth remembered Vera's request to call when her son returned, only after her own outburst. She took out her phone and dialed her mother-in-law's number, apparently, her former mother-in-law. Hello, Vera, hello, Elizabeth said in a detached voice. Elizabeth, what happened? Vera asked, panicked. In her confusion, she even addressed Elizabeth by her name. Oh, nothing, Roman came home. Well, thank God. Yeah, really. Are you sure you don't want to see your grandson even once in your life? Elizabeth didn't care about anything anymore. She wouldn't forgive the betrayal. Not for anything. Why are you asking like that, Elizabeth? Vera became wary. I'm divorcing your son and will forbid him from seeing the children through court. Elizabeth announced her decision in the same detached voice. Vera gasped and was silent for a few seconds. Elizabeth, I don't understand, what happened? He was drunk. Came home at 8 in the morning. He stank of women's perfume. His shirt was stained with lipstick. And he lost his belt somewhere. It can't be. Believe it or not. But he's still lying around in that state. In our bedroom. I can let you see for yourself. I'll be there in half an hour. Vera responded firmly. Elizabeth ended the call and started the car. Her tears had dried. She could go home. The woman felt simply awful. 10 years of marriage. 10 years down the drain. Her husband, who seemed so loving, caring, and faithful, had ruined everything in one night. He had cheated on her. There was no question about it. Elizabeth felt completely broken and depressed. She noticed nothing around her. So, she didn't see the red light she drove through. She heard a loud honk. Felt the impact. The airbag deployed right in her face. And then she saw only darkness. Elizabeth woke up in the hospital. Her worried mother-in-law sat beside her, holding a handkerchief. Her reddened eyes showed she had been crying. Vera? Elizabeth asked weakly. Her mouth felt like it was stuffed with cotton. Elizabeth, thank God, you woke up. The mother-in-law embraced her. As much as Elizabeth's condition allowed. Did I get into an accident? Yes, but don't worry, don't stress yourself out. The doctor said you have a concussion and your arm is broken in 2 places. They've already performed the operation, but you still shouldn't make any sudden movements. An operation? How long have I been here? 2 days? The kids? Don't worry, they're fine, I've taken them with me. Maxim, by the way, is such a charmer. I was such a self-assured fool, forgive me, Elizabeth, if you can, of course. I thought you weren't right for my son because I kept comparing you to myself. But I didn't realize I was being foolish. I didn't understand that happiness is having a complete family. All right, Vera, stop, I forgive you. Elizabeth weakly smiled. But a marriage with Roman won't fix things. I understand, Vera sighed heavily. I actually came to see you. I called, Roman answered. My God, I hoped you were exaggerating, but you weren't telling the whole truth. When he sobered up a bit, he swore he was at some club. Said there was no cheating. I don't know what to believe, Elizabeth. Maybe you should still talk to him? I understand that you'll defend him to the end. But I don't want to talk to him. I've seen enough. All right, but still think about it. Later, a little later. After all, you have 2 children, and raising even one child alone is a very difficult task. I'll think about it. Elizabeth reluctantly agreed. She was discharged from the hospital a week later. During all this time, Roman never came to see her. But Vera brought everything she needed. She felt very sorry for the girl. She regretted wasting 5 years on resentment instead of spending time with her grandchildren. Inside, Vera wanted to believe her son, but what she saw spoke otherwise. She had asked Roman not to bother Elizabeth for now. But she didn't entrust him with the children. She was afraid Roman might lose control again and disappear for the whole night. Elizabeth just wanted to rent an apartment and move the children there while she and Roman went through the divorce process. But in any case, she would have to go home for their things. Vera immediately volunteered to go with her to talk to Roman together. Elizabeth reluctantly agreed. At the doorstep of the apartment, Roman met the women. Elizabeth, are you okay? He immediately wanted to hug his wife, but Elizabeth moved his hands away from her shoulders. Yes, Roman, thanks for asking. I came to get the kids' things. Why? Elizabeth looked at him sternly. Do I need to remind you how you came home after your calming down activities? I didn't cheat on you. Roman shouted. Oh really? And how do you explain your appearance? I was at a strip club. Even under your shirt, there was lipstick. Roman, save your breath. Elizabeth waved her hand. Fine, the man exploded. Yes, I cheated on you, are you happy now? But everyone is entitled to one mistake in life. Well, my mistake was marrying you. Though no, unfortunately, without you, I wouldn't have had my children. Our children, Elizabeth. No, I forbid you to come near them. The girl replied calmly. And don't bother me now, I'll pack their things and leave. You're not going anywhere. Roman slammed his fist against the wall. Elizabeth flinched. Roman, one more act like this, and I'll call the police. Vera unexpectedly spoke loudly. I didn't expect such low behavior from you. You've become repulsive to me. It's truly better not to see the children. Mom, where are you going? Vera demonstratively dialed the emergency services on her mobile phone. Roman cursed and left the apartment. You won't get away with this so easily, Elizabeth, he said from the landing. The girl just sighed with relief. Thank you, Vera. You can see the grandchildren whenever you want. Nonsense. Anyone in my place would have done the same. Sadly, the woman replied. It was hard to realize that in an instant, her son lost his family when he was alive and well. Elizabeth divorced Roman 6 months later. 6 months after that, the court approved her ban on meeting with the children, as Roman began to have alcohol problems. He tried to ask his mother for money or secret meetings with the children. But Vera only gave him a drug addiction support card. The woman saw her grandchildren every weekend and was very grateful to Elizabeth for this opportunity. She only regretted not recognizing the good person in her sooner. But Elizabeth forgot about her former mother-in-law's critical attitude. They became good friends, and Roman eventually had to seek professional help and settle for a less prestigious job after treatment, only reminiscing about his happy life. Be life. Be life. Be life.